Welcome to the SwimSwam Breakdown. As always, I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. We've got a full panel today. Joining me is Loretta Race, Ben Dornan, and David Colossi. We've got a full SwimSwam crew here today because today we have one of the biggest topics in swimming, certainly over the last year. Holy David Popovici. What a week this dude has had. I think we've all written at least one article or video about what he's done over the past week, certainly over the past couple months. 46.86 100 free world record, 142.97 textile world record in the 200 freestyle. He robbed us of a 400 free final, but he did go 347 in the prelims, which to me felt like just enough to give a taste of like what he could do. But he's dropping out, or he dropped out of that, finished his meet early to focus on World Junior Championships. So my first question today to the panel is this: was his 100 freestyle the most impressive world record we've seen this year? Better than Malak's 200 fly, better than Thomas Chacón's 100 back?
I'm saying yes. For me, it's primarily because of his age, because it's typically, I was looking at the ages of other, world record holders, and Cielo was 22 when he made it 46.91. Okay. So, and Popovici has called himself a skinny legend. So it's not like he has these bulging man muscles or he's like an Elaine Bernard. So the fact that he was able to beat Cesar Cielo's record at just 17, like for me, that's the most just mind-blowing aspect of his entire race, not to mention technique, his drive, his cool demeanor, and the fact that he's so feisty. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think the other thing about his age, I also kind of looked at other ages of some of the comps that we've been making. And Dressel was also 22 when he went a 46. He didn't get the world record, but he was the same age as Cielo was when he did break the world record. And when Dressel was 17, I think it was like 2013 when Dressel was 17. And so that was obviously before he had even gone to an Olympics. And his best time at that point was a 48.97. It's like great for a 17-year-old, but at that stage, like when Popovici was Dressel's age, Dressel was at a 48.97. And Chalmers was a bit closer because he was 18 when he won Olympic gold and kind of had that high level, but that time relative to Popovici was not as fast. It was a 47.5 that won Olympic gold then. So I think a lot of the comps that you can make, there's reasons why they're similar, but in every way, Popovici is just more impressive because he's younger, he's faster than everyone, and he just has so much time to build from where he is right now. And we obviously have no idea where he's going to go from now, but 17 years old and having the world record is definitely the most impressive thing I've seen this year.
I think in addition to his age, also just his trajectory right now has been insane, because a lot of times we see these like young swimmers throw down pretty big performances. It's like, oh, well, they could drop X amount of time. He has been doing that. And it's like, well, at this point, like I felt like after Worlds, we kind of saw a ceiling where he was going to be for at least this year before some like bigger time drops. And then at Euros, he's like, hey, I'm going on the roof. And just like, there's an extra level we can go up to, because you see, I mean, what was it? Right before Tokyo, he went, 47.3 was it? And it was like, that was a huge time drop where it was like, all right, like, it's going to be so much harder for him to drop that last 0.3 just to get down like within the 46 range or 47.0 range. And then 1 year later, and here he is 0.5 faster with the new world record. And I think at this point I feel like the swimming world's kind of like braced. It's like, okay, he said he's preparing for junior worlds. Is he going to drop again? Like, what's going to happen with him? And he's just been at this just breakneck pace of dropping time. So rather than just like, oh, he could continue to drop time because he's so young, he is young and he's already been dropping time. And now it's just like, where's he going to stop?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also like his 142.9. I mean, if it wasn't for Biederman, like we'd be talking more about that was atrocious. That was like, I'm so glad Braden's actually not on this podcast because he would totally give me hell. Because I'm like, we're not going to see a 143. And I was right. We saw a 142. But seriously, if it wasn't for Biederman's insane world record, I think we'd be even talking about that, or even the fact that, he didn't go 46 in the 100 free. That kind of edged it because it's the world record, but the 142.9 is just freaking insane.
So with that, we're going to turn it over to sink or swim for the rest of this breakdown because we've got such a big panel and because we've got so many topics to cover. First off, David alluded to it. Popovici is going to Junior Worlds, his 4th major championship meet of the year. He's been to World Champs. He's been to Junior European Champs. He's been to European Champs. Now he's rounding it out with Junior World Champs. Will sink or swim, Popovici will break another world record in Lima, Peru at the 2022 World Junior Champs.
I'm going to sink it.
Oh, yeah.
We'll
follow Ben's lead.
I think that I would be I would expect him to, if he was going to break a world record, it would probably be that 100. I can see him getting that, like just taking a 1/100th off more likely than he can get down below a 142. I think that 142 is definitely, I mean, like who knows what Popovici will do in the future. Like it could happen. I don't think it's going to happen in a few weeks at his 4th international meet of the year. So I'd say if it was going to be a swim, I would say we'll see him get another 100th or 2/100ths off the 100. But I don't know. I can see him going a 47 low maybe, and that will be not impressive anymore, but still extremely impressive to see him go a 47 low. So I'm gonna sink it.
I think I'm also gonna sink it.
Yeah, go for it. We're saying the same thing. Go for it, David.
I think just because because he scratched the finals of the 400 free, and he said because he was focusing on World Juniors, and for me that kind of telegraphs that even though he's going to be in an insane form where if he hadn't just gone a 46.8 we'd be like, wow, he's going crazy, is the fact that it kind of simplifies at least the slightest amount of fatigue, which, you know, is it going to stop him from going 47 low? Probably not. Is it going to stop him from going 46.85? It might. But I say that knowing that every time I've doubted Popovici, he's blown by expectations. I wasn't expecting best times at this meet, and he just blew right through that. I was expecting him to add time in finals when he got his world record, because that's what he did at Worlds. Turn that one around. So even though I firmly believe it's a sink, not going to be super surprised if I'm wrong on this one, just because he seems to live to defy my expectations.
Yes. I'm sinking in it as well, only because it's like, how does Popovici top Popovici? You know, it's just like crazy at this point. So I'm sinking in it as well, but I'm with David. I mean, it's like a soft sink, you know?
Well, and the crazy part is that we saw David last summer kind of take on a similar schedule. He had like 3 big championship meets in junior, Euro Juniors, Euro Champs, and then the Olympics. And I think he went a best time at every one of those meets at a different point in a different event. So it seems like as he goes, he can do all of these championship meets really well and be right near his top form or on top form at all of them, just kind of in different things. And so, but with a 4th champ meet of the summer, I'm sinking as well. I can't see it. Like 40 going 46 twice. First of all, no one's ever done that in history. Second of all, let alone at the same meet. And third of all, he's just changed the game entirely, because that was a time that was so unattainable by so many people. As you guys said, he did it as a 17-year-old kid. But yeah, I just don't see him being on that top form in the 100 or 200. I think he's probably going to go there and swim a 50 and go best time in the 50. If he swims a 400 free, which swim fans everywhere want now, I think he could go best time in that, 346, 345. I think it's funny that everyone was like irate that he scratched the 400 free final, where like no one ever in history would break a world record in the 100 freestyle and then days later scratch the 400 free and people would be upset over it, right?
Yeah.
This is what he's done to swimming.
Also, I was going to make Chris predictions on the 400 free because I kind of invited it at the end of my breakdown of his 200. I'm like, if you want to go nuts and predict a 339, everyone's like 337. And I'm like, okay, go for it. I kind of egged him on for it, but it was entertaining to watch. Like the sea of the comments on that video. It's just like 39, 38, 37. I'm like, I think those are outnumbering like the 343 predictions that seem to be the most common.
Yeah,
I mean,
I feel like he would have done the 400 final if this was the big finale of his summer, but he does have that meet. When is it? In early September? I don't even know when World Juniors
I think it starts right at the end of August, like August 31.
Yeah. Okay. I would like to see him do a 400 there.
He's going to go to short course worlds too. I know that's not obviously long course, but it is a championship meet.
Yeah, that's 5 championship meets in 1 year. So we don't see that very often.
Maybe to him they're just meets. Maybe he just doesn't. He's the new Michael Andrew where he doesn't taper and he just swims fast. I mean, yeah, I had to say I was pretty upset this morning though. You know, I wake up, I look at my phone, the first thing I see, Popovici drops the 400 free final. I'm like, come on. It's like, this is the one thing I was looking forward to today, which we saw a lot of other good swims and we're going to get to a few of those, but it was a bummer. Hopefully maybe he sneaks one in Lima. Next up on Sink or Swim, Niccolo Martinenghi is now on top of the breaststroke world. He's a European champion in the 50 and the 100, tied for number 2 performer all time in the 50 breast, world champion in the 100. He got fanked in the 50 in Budapest, but he kind of made up for that with his performance in Rome. I am curious that if you see next season at the 2023 World Championships, Niccolo upsetting Adam Peaty in either 50 or 100 breaststroke.
Okay. I'm going to sink it because I honestly think if anyone is going to upset Peaty, soft upset, whatever, I think it's going to be Kuminga. I'm still pulling for Kuminga. He's the only other person who's been under 58 seconds. He admitted this time around he had gotten COVID not too long ago, so that was, affecting his performance this year. So he wasn't up to, his normal Arno self. So I think it's going to be close, definitely, and I think Niccolo could definitely, have a shot at it. I'm really pulling for Arno because he's 2-time silver medalist in the Olympics. He's always right there. His 50 is not great, so I would give Niccolo the 50 over Arno. But for the 100, I would really think if he did sub 58 once, he can do it again. And I mean, I'm not sure what Adam's times are going to be next year, but it's, he wasn't totally like his stellar self in the 100 this time around. So I'm sinking it only because I think it's going to be Arno, not Martinenghi.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to also sink it. And I think that potentially his results, Adam Peaty's results at the Commonwealth Games might end up being a blessing. I feel like he didn't go into this summer thinking that he was going to be on top of the world and go a 57 low or even a 57 high. I don't think that was his goal this summer after he got injured. He clearly knew that he was going to take worlds off and then compete at Commonwealth Games and see how it goes. That's the sense that I got from him. But I don't think that he expected to be off the podium. I don't think that he expected to be out of gold. And I think that it probably made him realize that while he still is far ahead of the world at his best, we saw that in Tokyo, he can still win gold at the Olympics. I think it maybe made him realize that even at a Commonwealth Games, he can get defeated if he takes his eye off the prize for a second, which I don't think he took his eyes off the prize. His foot injury and then kind of an unfortunate year probably made him take his maybe like lose focus or whatever. So I think maybe this made him realize that he actually needs to, I don't know. I can't say that he needs to try harder. I don't think that Adam Peaty isn't trying. I think he had an unfortunate circumstance, but I think losing the Commonwealth Games doesn't hurt his brand as much as losing a world championship or losing an Olympic medal does. Like hardcore swim fans follow the Commonwealth Games, but I don't think the Adam Peaty brand was destroyed because he came fourth in a race. So I don't know. In a way, I'm thinking that this might focus him a bit more for next year. And at more than a year out of this injury and a whole year to prepare. I don't see him losing. I think he'll get gold in the 100 for sure at 2023. I don't know about the 50. I can't tell if he cares that much about the 50, but even without caring that much, he won. Even if he doesn't care that much about the 50, he still won Commonwealth Games this year and can do a good 50. So I'm going to sink it. And I think that he's definitely not done and has a few more good years in him.
I'm going to sink as well for basically the same reasons. Just because we hear this all the time, is where it's easier to be a chaser than it is to stay on top. And even though he's undeniably on top, I'm really seeing like a big Peaty bounce back, because now that he's had this, off year caused mostly by injury, it's gonna, I feel like it's gonna be able to play like a mental trick almost to like convince himself that he's like needs to like chase and like avoid, like whether it's avoid being dethroned, or he's like sees himself as not like the top dog that year. Just kind of that like almost like the mental manipulations you can kind of do to yourself in training to be like, I need to chase, so that, and like just that extra drive, I feel like is so important when you've been so dominant for so long. I guess the point where it's like, how do you find that extra motivation to stay ahead of the world as it slowly creeps up on you? And I think that's something that Peaty's tried before. I think that's why he had Project 56, Project Immortal, because when you brand your goals like that, it kind of helps give you that kick. And I think, he's obviously going to recover from his broken foot. And I think that like extra motivation from, missing the podium at Commonwealths, I think that's going to energize him to go back to kind of what the swimming world has come to expect from Peaty in 2023 and 2024. So I'm sinking at.
And I wish I could swim it just so I could be disruptive and play devil's advocate. But I just talked to Mel Marshall yesterday morning, and I'd feel pretty bad if I'm like, yeah, no, she's a pretty good coach, but I don't think she can get him there. So I agree with you all. I think he's going to come back more motivated. I think this year was a weird year anyway, especially for Britain with having 3 major championship meets. And I think next year he'll probably get on a more normal cycle. I think she might have said he's going to short course worlds, which is pretty exciting.
Oh,
She did.
I did ask her about like his focus of long course and how he's kind of shied away from short course in the past. And her first response was he was built for long course. He was not built to start and to turn. His starts and turns are terrible. And we have gone through so much pain and sweat and blood and tears to make them like pretty good. And so that is not his forte. His forte is swimming. And so, that's just kind of been the focus, and that's been where he's been so dominant, obviously. But it'll be super fun to see him race in that short course pool. But I think if he's in the pool, then he's going to be super motivated. I think if he wasn't where he needed to be motivation wise, he'd probably step away. And he's on vacation in Greece now, so I think he'll come back refreshed, probably top the podium. But it was fun to think about. Niccolo had a great European Championships at home in Rome, winning the 100, the 50, and powering that 400 medley relay to a championship record. Another swimmer who had a standout meet, Marrit Steenbergen of the Netherlands, 6 medals in Rome, including double gold in the 100 and 200 free, silver in the 200 IM, powered 2 Dutch relays, 2 gold, which was the women's 4x2 and then the mixed medley relay. Do you see her kind of stepping in for the Dutch after Ranomi and Femke's retirements and bringing those Dutch relays back to prominence on the world stage moving forward, as in, let's say in the next 2 years at Worlds and at Olympics in 24, do you think she can be the anchor for those relays to win a medal on the global stage?
I mean, I've been covering Marrit since 2015. She was the breakout star of the European Games. And she was throwing down some of her fastest times that long ago. So she's one of those like natural talents. She truly is. And she took a break from the sport. You finished her studies, or at least like part of her studies. So, the fact that she's back and she's kind of rocketing back up in terms of that speed, I think her PB, I think she did. Yeah. 53:41 was her lead off at Worlds. And that was a personal best in the 100 free. But for me, I kind of wish she would just stop swimming the IM and just focus solely on the freestyle sprints, because she's just not that. Yeah, she got silver at Euros, but the whole final wasn't that fast, quite honestly. And she's not like, going to be like a 206 or 207. I mean, like nothing totally crazy in the 200 IM. So I wish she would just table that and focus solely on the sprint. But the Netherlands, it's going to take more than just Marrit. Obviously 2 huge powerhouses, like you mentioned, retired. So maybe Marrit can kind of be like the catalyst, I guess, for like a resurgence, but it's going to take more than her to have that much of an impact on the Dutch relays.
Yeah, I think I agree. I was just looking at kind of who else they have right now, and just looking at the 100 free rankings for that country for this year. It's Marrit occupying, I think, the top 8 spots, and then Tessa, I don't know how to say her last name, Tessa Giel, and a few other swimmers that are in 54 mid to 54 high. So I think that while Marrit's improving, it got down to 53.4, which is pretty significant for her. I don't know if I see them getting back to where the Netherlands was in 2008 to 2012 when I think they won in 2008 at the Olympics and then got silver in 2012. So yeah, I don't know if just her right now makes me think that they're going to get back on the podium in the next 2 years, but I think that she has a case for her potentially getting on the podium or getting into some major international finals. Because I kind of didn't know her backstory as much as Retta did, but it's really cool that she's kind of having her second wave and getting back into it now, and she's still taking off time. So I would think it on the relay
super
front.
Young.
Yeah, true. Yeah, what's she, 22?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she's a total phenom. Yeah, and so it is like new to some people, not so new. You know what I mean? If you follow her to earlier career, it's yeah. That's why I was saying I think she's like a natural.
Definitely.
I'm gonna play
so official answer is sink, but sorry, David.
I'm gonna play the disruptive role and go for a swim. 2 reasons. One, we talked about how you just said younger, gone personal best recently. There's some room, especially after kind of like you see as swimmers kind of like when they have time to kind of like refocus on the sport, then that kind of opens up the door for like big drops and continued improvement. So I see that helping out, but also you mentioned her being a catalyst. I think she's going to give the most important thing, and that is hope that we have a chance to medal. And then the other 3 legs, whatever that winds up being, that's going to be their motivation when they're training. That's going to be their motivation when they're at a competition, because now that they have this one key player they can rally around, then they're going to be able to try and bust through back onto that podium. I think it kind of reminds me of Great Britain's medley relay, how they kind of trying to get that gold medal at the Olympics. I mean, we saw James Guy scratch out of the 100 fly in order to try and get that gold medal because they wanted everyone to be firing on that. I could see a similar situation where other components of that relay are like, we need to go in on a relay. If they're able to kind of shift their focus onto that, I do see that potentially happen. So I'm going to swim it.
I'm glad you did it, David, because I'm sinking it. I do appreciate that perspective. I was kind of trying to think like US and us. So I'm thinking, I don't think their medley relay has much of a chance to medal on an international stage, but 4x1, potentially 4x2, even though they were not super fast at Europeans, they did win. She anchored in 156. And it's like, if your fastest leg by a couple seconds is 156, that's not really going to get the job done. But so Australia and the US, I don't think are going anywhere in the next 2 years in those relays. So China is always a factor in the 4x2 on the women's side. And so it's like and then Canada is kind of that other X factor that's been there. And without Kyla Sanchez, that leaves a little bit of wiggle room for like, how are they going to fill the role? But you still have Penny. You still have Maggie McNeil. You still have Taylor Ruck. You have Summer McIntosh, who threw down a 53, I think, at Commonwealths on the relay. She was on that relay that medaled. So like her speed is coming. She's obviously great in the tuner free. So it's like I don't think there's enough room to see them wiggling their way in there, but I would obviously love to see it as from the disruptor perspective. I think that'd be awesome if the Netherlands could find their way back on that podium and kind of rally behind this second coming of Steenbergen. Speaking of second comings, RUta Meilutyte, she is back with a vengeance. Double 50 breast titles at Worlds and now at Europeans. she threw, but surprise and double bronze medals in the 100 breast at both of those meets. The big shock, though, to me here, she won a best time 9 years later. The first time she's got a best time in this event in almost a decade. 29:44. She was 14 100ths off of Benedetta Pilato's world record, and she took 4 100ths off of her own Lithuanian record and personal best, which is just, I mean, call that a success to me, at least. I mean, that's pretty wild. And she looked dominant doing it in the semifinals. No one was close to her. Did you see her breaking that world record of Pilato's, in the lifespan of this second coming of Ruta? Do you see her breaking a world record?
I'm swimming it easy. I feel like that's an easy swim. I mean, she's fired back up. Originally, when she came back to racing, she was kind of like, I'm just doing it. I'm kind of seeing how it goes. She didn't really have anything on her agenda. And so I think the fire is totally just naturally, it's just the way that she is as a competitor. And so now I think she's like right there. And I mean, she's not going to be able to let it go. So I feel, and it's so close. So I'm totally swimming. I think that's an easy swim.
And I think that the fact that she has 2 more world championships before the Olympics, like I think that she's going to be the person that benefits from that almost the most. The fact that she'll have a world championships next year and in 2024 if she decides to go, and then obviously the 50 breast isn't at the Olympics, but that's 2 big chances to race that event again. And obviously she has probably 2 more European championships, which is where she's gone her fastest time yet. So I think she has a lot of opportunities, and 0.14 of a second is definitely not too much. I think that considering that Benedetta Pilato broke it by 0.10, I feel like we definitely don't know how low that record can go. The 50 breast is not one of the main events that people focus on. So it was kind of shocking when Pilato brought it down by a tenth of a second, and it just kind of exposed the fact that record can probably get a lot lower. So I'm swimming it as well for the long course 50 breast, but I'm maybe cheating by saying, what if she could get the short course 100 breaststroke record, which is kind of a fun history lesson that I only remembered today, is that she broke it in 2013, and then Alia Atkinson equaled that time 102.36 in 2014, and then again in 2016 Atkinson went the exact same time. So 3 people have gotten that world record, and I don't know how much a best time in the 50 breast will translate in the long course 50 breast will translate to a best time in the short course 100 breaststroke. But I mean, if we're seeing her go faster than when she was an Olympic gold medalist and multi-world record holder in just one event, I think we definitely don't know her potential. So I could see her getting the long course 50 breast and the short course 100 breast. And I don't know if I'm ready to say the long course 100 breaststroke. Lily King did a lot with that record, so potentially a third. But yeah, I definitely think I can see her getting a world record in the next few years. So I'm going to swim it.
Yeah, I'm not going to disrupt twice in a row. I'm going to swim it just because, I mean, like you said, so close to it. It's almost feels mean to be like, you're not going to drop those 400s. As well as, I mean, if we learned anything from Santos is that you can do a 50 of stroke for a long time and just stay right, especially after already going to best time. There's in 50s in general, there's so many little things that you can just like tune up, whether it's even, I mean, that's something that you could make up on just reaction time. I don't know if the reaction time wasn't that swim, but if she was a little sluggish off the blocks, just tune that up. But also I think in the past, because how old was her previous best?
9 years.
9
so
years.
From 2013.
I feel like in swimming we've seen a lot of improvements in like sprint training and like understanding that in the past 9 years. So I think if there's one, just in terms of incorporating a lot more power rather than just like, okay, you got to do 10,000 meters a day and, just like constantly, even though you're training for 50, you still got to keep up that insane volume. I think we've seen a lot more improvements when it comes to sprints. So I think if there is something, especially I don't really know her training background, but if that, something, if she was used to like just not as much like power work, and she's been getting that in most recent years. I think that's something that's really going to make it easy to just take little jumps forward to get that 50 world record, especially because I feel like that's something I feel like we're going to see a lot of people coming close to that world record time in the next couple of years. I guess in the next 3, because you can't count the Olympic year because no one's really going to be focusing on it that year. But definitely next year, I think we're going to see a really fast 50 breast field. So swim in that.
So one thing I loved about the announcers at the European Championships, which is not much, they were kind of critical of a lot of the swimmers, but they did mention the fact that before her comeback, Ruta was training at Plymouth with the same coach as Ben Proud in the UK. And so she actually does come from a history of really focusing on starts in the first 15 meters, which I found pretty interesting and made sense for what she did as a younger swimmer. But you can kind of see that carried over to now, where her start is still pretty excellent. She's usually ahead by the first 15 meters. And so I'm swimming it as well. I just had a conversation with Ruta as well, had never interviewed her before, but
that's so cool.
She dove into all kinds of stuff. She talked a lot about her past and just the early days of her career, how she developed an eating disorder, how she was not mentally healthy, and then eventually how she kind of overcame all of that, or is currently working on a lot of that, just in terms of developing those healthy habits, both physically and mentally. I think the time out of the water, she had a 2-year doping suspension for missing tests. She did not test positive. And that was kind of, she figured, even she was like, okay, this will just like be my retirement. And then ended up coming back because if you win an Olympic gold medal in Lithuania, you get like a stipend forever. And so in order for her to keep getting that stipend, she had to like come back and like do paperwork to like come back, and then she could officially retire and still get the stipend. And so she's like, okay, well, I'll come back and I'll do like a meet and then I'll retire. And then that kind of snowballed into what we see now, which is her winning world and European titles, which is, pretty cool comeback story. But I think she's a lot more mature than she was when she was younger. I think she's kind of fallen back in love with racing and competing and doing it for the right reasons, not, doing it because she feels the need to win or feels the need to win medals. And so I see her being able to go another best time and breaks a world record, as Ben said, in one of those events, whether it's 50 long course, short course, 100 short course, maybe 100 long course would be a bit of a stretch. I don't think she's dipped under 106 yet in this comeback, which I'm not putting it past her. But I think that might take a little more time.
Does the suspension that she got, even though she wasn't found to have been doping, does that knock her out of the ISL? Because I know that if you ever doped, you're out of the ISL. I don't know if that suspension is one of them. That's something to look into, because obviously this year we don't have ISL, but if that
if
lovely
ISL
league ever comes back, then
I think it would, because
it would.
If you look at, because I think it's just if you served a suspension, because I think that's the basis on which Lochte would have been disqualified from it, because he was never, his suspension was never for a substance. It was just for the method you took it with.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
it was just because he took it through IV rather than like what he was taking.
Well, I thought it was because he went over a certain amount.
That as well, but it was, I think
whatever.
It was a certain amount through an IV. That was the key point, was the method rather, because I think he was just basically just taking vitamins because he was like worried about like.
And then posted it on social media.
Yeah. Well, I think for a while, I think that was kind of like a trendy thing, like getting cupped, like getting an IV was like a trendy form of recovery.
It still is in the influencer world. Kendall Kardashian gets IVs when she's hungover.
Oh,
that is wild. I mean, it makes sense, but that is wild.
I just called her Kendall Kardashian, also Kendall Jenner. Sorry, I'm young. It's okay.
That is interesting. I mean, yeah, I guess my gut reaction would be yes to if you've just served as
Yeah.
suspension, then you wouldn't be
Would
it.
assume.
But yeah, guess we'll see if ISL comes back. We're not going to sink or swim that because we have no evidence or information whatsoever of that. So
We
next
never
up, another but ISL-esque Duel in the Pool is
Great
back.
segue.
It's wild, man. If you haven't looked at the SwimSwam preview for the Duel in the Pool, you should, because the event lineup is just nuts. I mean, it makes ISL look normal. It's got broken 400 and 800 freestyles. It's got traditional events. It's got multi-class mixed relays. It's got
Mystery
skins.
events.
It's got mystery IMs. I mean, like every weird event that like has ever been tested in the waters, it feels like, from like pro swims to ISL. Because like if you remember, there was like at least 1 year at the pro swim series where they did a mystery IM. But like it has all those. And I thought it was short course. Our preview says it's long course, which is such a bad idea to me. But
long course feels wrong also.
It's like, it kind of takes the fun out of it. Especially with all these weird events. It's like, you want me to do mystery IM long course? Or like, you want me to do, I don't know. But it's going to be fun to watch as a fan, I feel like. The both rosters have dropped.
Yeah.
Also, a reason I'm bummed it's long course is because short course, I think the US might actually have a chance. Long course, that chance is far slimmer on paper.
Well, it feels like they might have crafted their roster around a long course meet. There's a lot of around a short course meet. There's a lot of short course focused swimmers on the Duel in the Pool team. So I don't know. I'm sure they knew, but it really seemed like they thought it was short course to me.
It certainly kind of looks that way. So we have the full preview up. Sorry, sink or swim, or actually just tell me who you think is going to win, men, women, and combined.
Okay, I'll start with women. I was kind of looking at this to try to figure out what I was thinking, and I might have a different answer for men, which we'll probably discuss after. But I kind of looked at the top 4 swimmers on both teams and compared them, and then looked at who's left. So I just took the top 4 swimmers, just overall subjective rankings in my head of who the top 4 swimmers on both teams are. And for the US, I said Annie Laser, Bella Sims, Beta Nelson, and Mallory Comerford. That based on what the events are, that's who I thought might be like the 4 strongest. And then for Australia, it's Kaylee McKeon, Emma McKeon, Molly O'Callaghan, and Shayna Jack. And I think you could sub out some sprinters for that Shayna Jack spot. So I think in the top 4 swimmers, I think Australia definitely wins. You know, that's Olympic gold medalists, recent Commonwealth Games medalists, and then a lot of good swimmers who had done well at the Olympics and done well in the NCAA. But Australia's winning so far. And then I just looked down the list at who's left after I took out those top 4. And for the US, you have Caitlin Dobler, Linnea Mack, Gabby Albiero, who, as I mentioned earlier, are, I think, strong short course swimmers, and we've seen them done well in the ISL and the NCAA, but I don't think
Beta Nelson.
Yeah, definitely Beta Nelson. I don't think that they're going to go up against the next tier of Australians, which is Meg Harris, Brianna Thrussell, Maddie Wilson, Lanny Pallister, Jenna Strauch, like Chelsea Hodges. I just think Australia on the women's side clearly has the depth, and I just looked at it that way in terms of tiers, and it was really clear to me that Australia will probably win on the women's side. So I'm going to say Australia for the women. I don't know if anyone else wants to say what the men is or what they think about the women.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I think I'll just ask any other perspective from the women's side, because it seems pretty one-sided.
You went through point by point everything that I had in my head. So yes, I think us on the women's side advantage strongly in Australia's favor.
Yeah. So turning to the men, I think it's much more even maybe US dominant on the men's side. What do we think for this one? Loretta, can you start us for the men?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like being okay, I'm a total admitted Aussie fan. Okay, like James Magnuson, please unretire. Okay, but the men's 5100 on the Australian side is like really actually weak. I mean, it's actually pretty weak. So you're looking at, you have Michael Andrew, you have Ryan Held. I mean, so even just, and I know there's going to be some of these off events, which I honestly think will kind of level the playing field a little bit. But number one, my comment on this is it's going to be, I think, the US men primarily because of the sprinting. But just on the whole, I love the marketing campaign. Like I don't know if you guys saw Swimming Australia today, but they were like, USA has like this tortoise as their mascot. Like, I just think it's funny, you know what I mean? Like the back and forth. But the other thing is they need to do t-shirt relays. I'm so mad there's not t-shirt relays of all things. They didn't add that. So anyway, so men, I'm giving the edge to the USA, but I don't think it's going to be a total throwdown smackdown. I think it's going to be a little bit closer, but still giving the edge to the US.
I definitely agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. Just because, I mean, especially in the sprints, it's very level towards the US over Australia, as well as I think the interesting thing for because we don't have lineups, we just have we don't have entries, we just have the lineups. Is there's a thing where it's like you have some highly versatile swimmers on the USA team, where you have the big ones that stand out are Michael Andrew and Shane Casas. Is in a perfect world where you could use them in every single event and they would go their ideal time, it's much more strongly in the US's favor. However, I think it's on making sure you can manage their load properly. And especially, I mean, we've seen in ISL, Michael Andrew try and take on a really ambitious program in a really condensed meet, and it doesn't go super well because it's really hard for anyone to do that. And so I think if the key for the US and making sure they can hold on to their advantage is making sure that they can tactically deploy their really versatile stars and manage the program so that way they don't get burnt out by the end of day 2. And then especially if they need to supplement those weird off events that no one can really know what's going to happen going into it, because I don't think we have a huge amount of prior basis to analyze mystery IM.
Yeah, I think in the comments, people were saying like, oh, I mean, they're only going to swim like 4 or 5 events per session, which it's like people in ISL did not swim that many events in a session, and it's like, and they were 2-hour sessions. It's like, that is a lot of, even if you're swimming 3 events in a session, which it seems like these will be probably between 2 and 3 hour sessions. I'm guessing they're cramming a lot of events in there, and including a lot of skins. So I'm curious as to how that's going to work, but it's a lot of swimming. And I think the load management will be really key, which is why I'm pretty excited that Dave Salo is US's head coach. He has experience with the ISL from head coaching at Tokyo Frog Kings. So he kind of knows how to do this. Personally, I think Michael Andrews should just swim all the 50s and then kind of sub in everyone else as they go. It's like we have Ryan Held, who is actually a really good 50 butterflyer long course, 50 backstroker long course. We've got Justin Ress, who can do freestyle and backstroke on the men's side. Shane Casas, as you mentioned, can pretty much do everything. Maybe not breaststroke, but who knows, maybe. And then like for the longer events, we've got Trenton Julian, we've got Chase Kalish. So it's like, I like how the men look, or how the US men look. I think they will take it on their side. And again, I think that load management will just be kind of key. So then overall, who do you think is going to win this thing? Also, do we even know how it's going to be scored?
I was just about to ask.
idea.
Oh, I'm just going on paper, and I'm just anecdotally saying I think Australia is gonna get the edge. That's just me kind of saying, okay, if everything was kind of point value, kind of roughly the same, that's what I'm going with. And they're on their home turf, and they have Cody Simpson. Maybe he'll do like a halftime show, or
God, that would be awesome.
That would be cool.
That's going to tire him out for his events, though.
That's true.
Good, right? If you're a US fan.
So I'm just going to be toxically optimistic on this one topic.
What's
I'm
new?
going to say the U.S. And I think there's a few factors that kind of weigh for and against that. Number one, obviously, the U.S. team had to make the trip to Australia, and that's a hard adjustment no matter what. It's a huge travel. That's a huge time difference. But they will have been there for about a week by the time that the racing happens. And so I think that's enough time to adjust. I think all of these people, especially on the men's side, it's not their first trip. On the women's side, some of them it is, and they might not score a lot, but I think it'll be a really great experience for them. I'm super happy for them. And some of the women are experienced veterans, and I think they will kind of pull their weight and score the points that they need to.
The other thing for the US is that a lot of these swimmers have been training all summer and training for this, maybe. Australia, a lot of them are in the middle of Commonwealth Games and Duel in the pool right now. I think Cody Simpson and Emma McKeon are currently in Italy, just kind of hanging out.
I think they according to the comments,
just went back.
They just went back.
Yeah. So I think that, that will also benefit, even though the Americans did have to make the trip. The training aspect, probably the Americans weigh in the favor, because there's not a lot of even world champ swimmers on this team. It's a lot of people that kind of did trials and then have been resting or training until now. So that'll benefit the US a bit.
I think the ones that were on Worlds are people who can throw, like, Michael Andrew and Shane Casas, just for me to mention them
Chase
again.
Kalish.
It's like but those two in particular, they throw down all of the time, no matter, it could have been in December and they would be like, yep, we're going to go with some of the fastest times in the world. Here we go. Because they can just turn it on. And then, of course, you have people who like Chase Kalish, who are just generally awesome.
I think a lot of Australia's bigger dogs, Caleb McEwen, Molly O'Callaghan, Matt Temple on the men's side, it's like they were at Worlds, they did comm games. And so it's like, they're kind of coming off the heels of a double championship season. And I'm thinking they're at least a little tired. And so maybe they will be fatigued. Maybe they may not perform as well as we would have expected them to. So US has never lost this meet, and I think they can pull a W this time. David, Ben, what do you guys think?
I do
Who's going to go with the US?
For me, I feel like a huge thing that obviously we said we don't know is the scoring, because it depends on how you distribute the scoring points could be something that really winds up mattering, because you can it depends on how big of a bump you have.
Triple points for skins.
Or not even that, just like what the breakdown is, like, how big of a first place bump there is. Like, you give, like, for example, like in high school versus college dual meet scoring, the only difference is that in college it goes from 6 points to 9 points, and then suddenly you can't win events without actually winning the event. So it depends on if you're able to, in terms of overall scoring and the momentum of the meet. Well, yeah, that did sound like a really
can't win if you don't win.
So it depends on, like, for example, I'm looking at the breakdown with like the top 4 times for the whole roster. Is if you look at, for example, the women's 200 IM, Caleb McEwen 2:08.5. Next fastest is Beta Nelson at 2:11. Low likelihood that Kaylee doesn't win. However, US has 2, 3, and 4. So if there's a really high bonus for winning first place, to where the combination of the, going 2, 3, and then Australia being 4th doesn't, either shrink that gap considerably or like tie the amount. Say the most basic is if you allot the points, 3, 2, 1, 0, then 3, you get 3 points, and then 2 and 1, even it out so the event's a wash. But if it's like 6, 2, 1, then you're only at half the points, even if you go 2, 3. So I think the US is going to, a lot of it is going to be trying to sneak those people up into higher scoring positions, even in events where it's like, an Australian swimmer is probably going to win it. Like Coleman said, I'm gonna go for US on this, just because they haven't lost it, and I think it's exactly like the medley relay in Tokyo. Everyone was going for Britain, and Coleman, I believe, called it, saying that U.S. was going to win. And I was sitting at home going, U.S. is going to win. And we both got it. So I think we both got it this time, Coleman.
Ben, you're going with U.S. as well?
Yeah, U.S.
But the real question is, what does Ben's sweatshirt think? We need to ask
my sweatshirt. My sweatshirt has a lot of thoughts and opinions, and people look at it and they don't really know what to think. So a tie, maybe a tie.
That's all I want out of this meet is a tie, because as tradition states in Duel in the Pool past, it comes down to a mixed medley, 200 medley relay, which if they do that long course will be super weird, but I'm all about it. This happened in 2013. If you're not up to speed with Duel in the Pool history, US won.
Okay.
It was in Glasgow. We were racing the European All-Stars at that time, but yeah, so it's happened once. I hope it happens again. If there's jackpots, that would just add even more craziness to this meet.
Can I just use this also as an opportunity to brag about the fact that the very first time we heard about Duel in the Pool, they were saying Ledecky versus Titmus, Chalmers versus Dressel, and I called it that neither of those were going to happen, and I ended up being right.
And now none of those swimmers are swimming.
None of it. The 4 people that were top billing are not going to be here.
Yeah. Oh man. Good thing we brought Duel in the Pool back. This has gone a little long, so I'm gonna call it there. This has been the SwimSwam Breakdown. Thank you to our SwimSwam panel for joining us today. Thank you to our audience for listening in. This is the SwimSwam Breakdown. Tune in every week for your week's news in swimming.